Untamed is going to be untamed. It's going to be a little crazy. I want to talk to my people. I want to talk to my brothers and sisters. We can have grace and humility in how we interact with other people.
Oh, hot dog, look at you.
And nobody talked about what's really happening.
And let's have conversations about what truth is.
The Clinton Foundation, Apex Partners, the Islamic Circle of North America, Osama bin Laden, Grameen America, Shore Bank. While all of these might seem as if they're random, unconnected entities, what if in fact they were all connected?
Welcome back. It is Saturday. Normally I don't do shows on Saturday, but this is a pretty important set of information we've been working on for a long time, and our analyst slash whistleblower slash individual put this together is a military vet, and he has spent years doing research on the systems that run our elections, how they're all connected, what they're connected to, and we're going to bring a lot of receipts. Now, this is a lot of information that you're going to take in, so we're not going to get it all done in one episode. But what I will tell you is that what you're about to hear is 100% accurate, every bit of it. And there'll be some stuff that we'll clean up as we go along that, to add information. We're going to use a mind map that'll kind of show you what the connections are between the two, or 3 or 5 or 10, or in this case, hundreds. But I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to welcome B to the show. B, welcome.
Hey Joe, thanks for having me. I'm B. I'm a open source intelligence analyst slash researcher, partially by trade, but also by hobby, due to my military experiences. Basically, what I've uncovered here is just an accumulation of years of various different investigations, which have all kind of amalgamated into this one mind map. Now, between these 116 nodes, which are included on here, we'll go from everything from ThoughtWorks to Seth Rich to the DNC to Muhammad Yunus, the current interim advisor who's leading Bangladesh, all the way to how they connect into Al-Qaeda and even people involved with Jeffrey Epstein. So, and of course, Dominion voting is right smack in the middle of it. So with that, I'll surrender the mic back to Joe, and we'll get going on this mind map here.
But let's just get started. You're not gonna see a whole lot of me. You're gonna hear a whole lot of B. You'll get some commentary where Patrick will come in. If you haven't noticed, we have masked B's voice. We are not going to put him on screen. It is dangerous to draw all the conclusions and bring all these things together based on this information. So we're going to do the best we can to protect B and to protect his identity. So let's start with Roy Singham. Let's start at the top. B, I'm going to give you the floor. Let's put the mind map up and let's start there.
Okay, perfect. So we'll go ahead and start here with Neville Roy Singham. And if we click on the link on the node for the Newsline mag, it'll bring up an article which just discusses in general some of the activity in which he partakes in. You'll see this article is titled "The Big Business of Uyghur Genocide Denial." This article basically goes into all the background about Neville Singham and his upbringing and his links to the CCP. an interesting point to make, and one that will be brought up again in future episodes, is his links to, various South Asian entities. He's currently under investigation right now in Hyderabad, India, for pushing CCP influence in Indian elections. He
Now,
is also
this article also has a link between him and Huawei in China.
correct, yes. So he is actually a former senior executive for Huawei. If you go into the node right here, you'll see an image outline on the node up top. This was actually a record from the Brazilian archives that they had of his work he was actually doing in Brazil for Huawei. It includes his passport number in there as well. His history with Huawei is very well, extremely documented, and it's partially why he is actually under investigation by the Indian authorities right now because of his activities in Huawei. He is also the leader. He's the founder and creator of an organization called ThoughtWorks. ThoughtWorks, again, is another entity we will get into later on at a later date, because that is a much more vast web regarding a British PE firm called Apex Partners and ThoughtWorks and their work alongside Seth Rich and the DNC to create NGP Van and the National Voter ID database. Roy Singham is the guy who created that.
And so,
His
just so everybody understands, in 2019, the U.S. placed Huawei on what's called an entity list, which
Correct.
limits their ability to do business with American companies. And this was in response to a bunch of allegations, but specifically allegations related to Iran and helping Iran evade sanctions. Correct?
Correct, yes. If you actually go into the Beast archives, we can, Mr. Producer, if we can pull up that PDF document for Huawei's entity listing. So that is the OFAC. We'll come back to this because they are, again, a sanctioned entity on the OFAC. Anyways, I'll read to you from this article, from this document, actually, which lists Huawei as an entity. Part 1, why did BEAS add Huawei to the entity list? BEAS added Huawei Technologies Limited and many of its non-U.S. affiliates to the entity list effective May 16, 2019, on the basis of information that provided a reasonable basis to conclude that Huawei is engaged in activities that are contrary to U.S. national security or foreign policy interests, and its non-U.S. affiliates pose a significant risk of involvement in activities contrary to the national security of the United States. This included the alleged activities of the Department of Justice's public superseding indictment of Huawei, including alleged violations of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, conspiracy to violate IEPA by providing prohibited financial services to Iran, and obstruction of justice in connection with the investigation of those alleged violations of U.S. sanctions. Effective August 19, 2019, BEAS added another 46 non-U.S. affiliates of Huawei to the entity list because they also pose a significant risk of involvement in activities contrary to the national security or foreign policy interest of the United States. So what this document does, it describes in 2019 why U.S. affiliated companies are not allowed to do business with Huawei or any of their US-based affiliates. So I think this document really is a good starting point to set the stage for today's discussion and why the 2020 election should have been declared illegitimate. due to the interference of Huawei, which will be discussed with roaming networks. And what is the relationship of roaming networks to Huawei? Roaming networks, a Serbian-based company, has since 2013 been a business partner, a value-added business partner with Huawei. They've been doing an obscene amount of business together, and that's by their own admission. They produced this document, which they have since tried to erase, which discusses all their different clientele. You can see in here, roaming networks is the primary data center for Dominion voting systems. If we can pull up that PDF for roaming and Dominion listing, so we can show the audience that.
So this, let me before you go any further on this document, we did some digging on this document. This is a part of the document that dates back to the symposium, the cyber symposium in 2021. And I gave a presentation about this on the stage at Michael and Dell's symposium, correct?
Correct. Yes, you did. As a matter of fact, much of that presentation at the symposium originated from this document. Well, there were actually multiple different sets of this document, which were printed with variation in length. But this particular one was the one which we used for that presentation, which also included the bills of lading, might I add, kind of off topic here, but the bills of lading for Dominion voting systems, showing shipments from China, Taiwan, and Vietnam through CCP controlled entities. So that was all discussed at length in that presentation, which I believe is still online. But if we go through the rest of this document, if we can, please just scroll down. We'll see a list of all their different partners, many of whom are actually sanctioned by the U.S. anyways. Their partners and their clients. For instance, one of their clients is a company called Meta, which is banned in the U.S. Another is the Bank of China. No explanation needed there. And another is an entity which we will hear about again called Hikvision, which provides facial services to the CCP authorities. These have been recorded and used at length against not only the Uyghurs, they've been used to subjugate the Uyghurs, but they have also been used in Palestine to track Palestinian movements. So they have a very extensive history. They have a very large footprint internationally, but they are still banned from doing any type of business with the U.S. You will also see Telecom Serbia right there on the screen. The former chief technology officer for roaming networks was actually an executive at Telecom Serbia. Just one of the many other connections.
And Telecom Serbia is connected to Ericsson, correct?
Correct, yeah, actually, so if you go down to the bottom of this document, you'll see that they're also partnered with Ericsson as well. Let's just go ahead and scroll down to the good stuff, so people can get an idea of it. You see, it's also connected to FirstNet as well. They guys basically built out a lot of the structures, a lot of the ICT structure for a lot of these entities. You'll see Huawei on the screen right now. Again, Telecom Serbia, a lot of these same entities keep reappearing.
Then you see other
again,
companies like
Meta.
Cisco, which is a U.S.-based company.
Yeah, and you'll see also right there, if we can stop
Bank of
real
China.
quick, Mr. Producer, roaming group headquarters, Huawei, and then right under it, Bank of China, Huawei. They built these entities for these various different organizations, for these various different companies.
So they built data centers for these companies.
Correct. They built data centers all the way up to the towers in which they operate on, as well as the fiber systems that they use, which they're pivoting more towards right now. And we'll get into that a little bit later in today's episode. National Assembly of the Republic of Serbia, Sberbank, which is also another interesting entity as well, which has quite a bit of let's say overlap with some Central and Eastern European entities, which are also banned. If we look over here on the left, you'll see USA Griffith Foods. Now they had actually added this one in there, but there is no record of Griffith Foods actually having done any type of business directly with roaming, but they did work with them through Cisco, as Joe alluded to earlier. Now, if we can just scroll down to page 23. Okay, right here. Stop, Mr. Producer. Page 22. Here we are. ICT infrastructure and data center. You'll see it. Meta right here, which is again banned U.S. entity. Right above that, you'll see Dominion voting. That is the implementation of the pure flash storage system at the primary data center for Dominion voting.
And the
Now, if we
primary data
scroll-
center, this primary data center is in Serbia.
Correct, it is. It's in Belgrade, Serbia. As a matter of fact, it is Dominion Voting's office in Serbia is located basically a mile away from Roaming Network's office. It's essentially it's separated by a public park. So if you were to walk directly through the park, you would be there in a matter of minutes. That's how close in proximity, both from an incorporation standpoint as well as a geographical standpoint, that these two entities are to each other. Roaming Networks is created by a guy named Nenad Kunec, who is he's considered a very corrupt Serbian oligarch, but their U.S. entity, alleged U.S. entity, has a whole body of work within the U.S. which could indicate that they're establishing a whole new system within the U.S. as well, and we'll get on into that a bit later on. So yeah, Mr. Producer, if we can just scroll down to the bottom so we can see who all these guys are partnered with.
You have Huawei.
Yeah. You have VMware, you have Nokia, and you have Ericsson. They're all partnered with Roaming Networks.
Now, B, this document was a publicly available online document in 2020,
Correct.
2021, correct?
Correct.
Is it currently a publicly available document?
No, it is not, and we are going to get to that in just a few notes here. You can see the rest of their affiliates down there, and if you look very closely down at the bottom, you will see that they are located in Belgrade, Serbia.
Yeah.
So again, we have a Serbian-based company which is partnered with Huawei, does business with Meta, Hikvision, the Bank of China, and which is also in charge of implementing all the storage protocols for Dominion voting.
So they called out
but
1 degree of separation, right?
Correct, 1 degree of separation, and we'll get into a few more of those connecting nodes probably in a future episode. One thing I'd like to point out to the audience is this map is incomplete. So I have yet to add Dominion founder, Chief Technology Officer Goran Obradovic to the map yet, but he is another Serbian connection to it. He is one of the original patent holders for Dominion voting in Canada. His name is all over the Dominion patents in Canada, and we even have documentation of him presenting the architecture of Dominion voting systems in Belgrade in 2003. He was also the former president of the Canadian Serbian Association. And as we'll see, that's not the first time that a Serbian Canadian connection to Dominion will rear its head, will surface throughout this investigation. So with that, we can get back to the mind map here. If you go down, we can see
it's not publicly available. So we're going to talk about that a little bit further on.
Correct. Yes. So when we get down to that node, we'll see that. So if we go right here, you can actually see Huawei, the press release. If you click on this, the sanction, that will take you to Huawei's sanction. They have 4 entities listed. This is just one of them. And you'll see it's effective from 2021 and 2022. And again, this is just doubling down on the fact that they should not be doing business. Dominion Voting should not be doing business with them. And as such, I would posit that Dominion Voting is illegally conducting business in violation of these sanctions. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, so I do want to say this. Scott Lundbecker, who's the CEO and the founder of No Inc., purchased Dominion Voting Systems just less than a month ago. And in that purchase, there's something to be noted about him, is that he participated in the Kosovo elections in 2010. And so he has Serbian ties. And in 2017, best I can tell, he also was a part of Serbian. He has quite a few Serbian connections specifically.
Correct. Yeah, he did. And if I'm not mistaken, he did that as a Republican too.
Well, he said it's easy to say or something. I mean, that's pretty easy.
Well, I think at the end of this road on this mind map, I think a lot of people will see just how complicit the Republican Party's been in a lot of malicious and activity and malfeasance globally, and that their hands are not much cleaner than the Democrats. So, but time will tell. Let's just go through the evidence and draw our own conclusions from there. Mr. Producer, if we can go and click on the roaming networks node, so we can go there. And again, this is just based off of the documentation which you presented at the Cyber Symposium. Now, to Joe's previous points, yes, they have completely erased the previous document which showed that they had any affiliation with Dominion Voting. You cannot find this document anywhere else online. It's not available. It's even been erased from the Wayback Machine. So
the Wayback Machine's also been completely wiped.
Yes, there's no mention of roaming networks on the Wayback Machine, and I can tell you they were wiped because I had archived it years ago. And you'll notice I said dot. Why does it say dot on there? It's because they actually changed their name. Roaming Networks even changed their name on all their incorporation documents beginning in 2023 and in 2024 to dot networks. They no longer go by roaming. So
let's ask a question about this because you're deep into it. But they're now dot networks. Did they sell the company in the United States as well, or did they bankrupt that company in the United States?
No, they just changed all the documents over to say dot. That was it. They literally just reincorporated as dot.
Yeah, but didn't roaming networks in the United States actually declare bankruptcy?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, all right.
But if we go over here, so roaming networks and dot, we're about to see. I mean, they're effectively just the same thing. They're foreign registered because they're also registered in Serbia. So that's a good point to add as well, and that's why I made the joke earlier about roaming networks USA LLC as being an independent entity. It's not. There's actually no record of incorporation for roaming networks in the U.S. So they are a foreign company, and they're not just foreign in the fact that they're registered from another state, but the fact that they're registered from another country as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're reviewing any documentation about roaming networks. Is a lot of it's actually originally in Serbian, and we'll get to that later because they did the same thing with these other companies as well. But if you see to the left of this, we'll just go back to Hikvision here. This article from Hikvision basically describes how they're being used to, let's say, subjugate the Palestinian population, and they're also used coincidentally against the Uyghurs as well. So within these 3 or 4 nodes alone, we've got one guy who's bankrolling the CCP's denial of Hikvision being used to subjugate the Uyghur population. But the companies which he does business with are the ones who are actually providing that same surveillance equipment to the Chinese Communist Party, among other people, to conduct said surveillance. So it just really goes to show you how transactional and hypocritical these people are. But with that, so if we go over to the right, actually, of roaming networks and dot, I included this. This is the ISO certification. If we go over to the right, Mr. Producer. So you'll see that they're actually certified, and I included this because I wanted to show that their whole infrastructural architecture is based out of Serbia. To the point where they even have to get their certifications from Serbian entities. In this case, the CKPI. If you'll see the node, it's the name that's spelled out there. I'm not even going to attempt to say that because I do not speak Serbian. Okay, so if we move on past the ISO, let's go down to Nikola Petrovic. He is currently listed as the CEO of Roaming/Dot Networks USA. And you'll see this interview here. And you can translate this interview from Serbian into English. And you'll learn a lot about their footprint and their setup within the United States.
Okay.
So if anyone has interest.
So just so you know, Nikola Petrovic, so in 2023, Roaming Networks USA filed bankruptcy in an Illinois court. Here's the document.
Okay. Yeah. I think I remember seeing something about this now, but
and remember, if you look at Chicago Heights and that address, that was the warehouse address that in 2020
we went to, and no one was there.
No, we went there, and it was above a it was above a building that did wiring.
Yeah.
But there was no one in Roaming Networks. And when I asked the guy downstairs, it was Roaming Networks upstairs, he looked at me with 3 heads and said, "No, there's nobody there. There's no company like that here."
Yeah, and they've got kind of a weird model that you'll see with fiber and tower equipment.
Yeah.
You'll see it in reciprocity throughout the rest of this presentation. Sorry, not in reciprocity. You'll see it repeatedly throughout the rest of this discussion. So if we go over here, we look at Nikola Petrovic. He's the listed Roaming.Networks USA CEO. And this is also the same on his LinkedIn. He still has that publicly available. It's the same as well on his Rocket Reach, and every other entity, database out there has him listed as being the CEO. It also has him listed as the CEO of Apex Fiber Solutions, which look at over here. If we click on this node, you can actually see the Florida incorporation in these names on these incorporation documents. You will see repeatedly throughout the rest of this presentation as well. In total, between these names you see up here, between these people on this mind map, there are over 20 corporations which are affiliated with, and most of them don't have anything at all to do with the telecom industry. As a matter of fact, Apex Fiber Solutions is effectively the only one. Apex Fiber Solutions. The keynote there being Nikola Petrovic. Again, a Serbian name. He's a Serbian national. But if we look at the address for Apex Fiber Solutions below, we'll see that it intersects with a guy named Bojan Delibasic. So if we click on Bojan over here, if we click on Bojan Delibasic on the background on the image node, on the node for the incorporation paperwork form, you'll actually see Bojan is the CEO, the corporate officer actually of multiple different entities: True Dispatch, MG Truck Center, Apex Fiber Solutions Group, AFS Equipment, as well as Alina Holdings. And we'll get down to Alina Holdings here in just a moment. Now, if you click on the link actually for the node, this will actually take you to a real estate transaction detail where he sold his house in Florida for $5.1 million. Now the address for that house is 13999 Old Cutler Road in Florida. So that's how we know these are also his incorporated entities up here. Again, it's just multiple data points pointing in one vector. So,
and then you also have a you also have a company called Maybach, right?
correct.
It's a
Yes,
very large trucking company.
Correct. It is. It's a very large trucking company which has its primary areas of operation in Florida, South Florida specifically, in the area of Fort Lauderdale, in Chicago, in the surrounding areas of Chicago, as well as Canada.
So if you wanted to ship ballots, if you wanted to ship paper, if you wanted to ship anything, and you owned that system and you were tied to roaming networks, which is tied to Dominion, you could run a complete criminal enterprise and no one would know about it.
Correct. Yeah. Theoretically, yes. And these are not shell corporations, might I add. There are multiple assets listed to all these companies, and we'll get down to that when we get to looking at Maybach. But I wanted to go back up here to 1384 Madeline Lane, and this is just really the physical structure, which shares a lot of incorporated commonalities with these different entities. For instance, Apex, as a matter of fact, if you even go onto Apex's website, it'll show their address is 1384 Madeline Line. The same is true with Maybach International Group, which there are actually multiple articles talking about how they broke ground on their facility down there. So again, these are all connected literally by incorporation, using the same corporate officers, as well as by the same locations. So they have geophysical proximity as well. But yeah, if we go down to 1384, you just type in that address and you'll see multiple different entities are registered out of there. And there are a lot of Serbian names affiliated with those entities. The one in the icon is Nene Balak. He has multiple commercial trucking entities registered to his name, Balak Trucking, actually. So does Nikola Petrovic. There's actually a Petrovic Trucking as well. So this is kind of the model that they're all using. in the U.S. And I should point out too that all of these guys, all these people are from the same city in Serbia. They're from Novi Sad, Serbia, which we'll get to in a minute. So if we go down here to Nenad Kudic, this was actually a huge data point for being able to verify that, again, these guys are from Novi Sad, Serbia. If we look over here on the right, this was actually from a service which was sent to him from Florida's attorney from Ventura, Florida.
For a divorce, right? Divorce agreement.
For a divorce, yep. He divorced his wife Petra, and they actually served him via email to an email address located in Novi Sad, Republic of Serbia. So again, that was just another data point to help connect a lot of these. But really, the big gold mine with all of this came from Maybach International Group. So, Mr. Producer, if we go on to Maybach International Group, you'll see the image icon is written in Serbian. This is their 2016 incorporation for an entity called MIG-RS, Maybach International Group RS, Republic of Serbia. And George Kulcic, who we'll be discussing also in this presentation.
So you have Dominion that is in the United States and Canada with a sophisticated group of companies, shell companies, different addresses. Then you have the connection to Serbia where they have Dominion in Serbia. They have a data center in Serbia. So they have operations in Serbia. They have their coders in Serbia. It's not that far long ago that we had the massive conflict in Kosovo, Serbia, right?
Correct. And I have I have my theories about what transpired there as well with Eric Rosenbach and
so
General
they're using the same sophisticated system in order to go undetected by basically diluting out and creating these same points, but basically right next door to each other.
In this case, they're even in the same building in some of these cases. And most of these are shell companies, but not all of them. And we'll see what I mean by that, about the assets actually attached to them when we get down to Panda truck sales, which again provided us another huge data point. As a matter of fact, we can just go ahead and get down to Panda truck sales directly right now. So in this document, these were actually part of the incorporation documents in the state of Florida, but I found some transactions where Panda Truck Sales had actually sold vehicles or transferred vehicles over to Maybach International Group. And they did it with all three of these people basically being on the signature line. Rilja Hornacek, or Hornacek. There's about 3 different spelling variations of that name, which is very common. A lot of foreigners do that. You'll see some variation in the way they spell their name or even pronounce their name. But again, Nenad Kudic was also on here as well as again, another one, Nenad Balak, who was on some previous incorporation documents, which we had as well. You'll see they're kind of spread out all over the place. They have Miami, they have Chicago, they have DePlain, Illinois. There was one address in New Mexico as well. But with that, I think we can go ahead and come over here to, let's go over here to Relja Hornek now, Mr. Producer. If we click on that, we'll actually see that she is on the documentation for Panda Truck Sales as well as Maybach as well. And they also use the same Fort Lauderdale address on a lot of these documents too. That's 6301 Power Line Road. You'll see a lot of intersectionality with other incorporations. Again, like I said, these guys, they have basically over 20, but less than 30 corporate affiliations. And now if we go over here to the left, you'll see Alina Holdings LLC. This was actually another big data point when I found these incorporation documents, because it gave me one name in particular, which I had only been able to find on one or two other documents, and that is Dorde Kuljic. Dorde is effectively the founder, the creator of Maybach International Group. And as a matter of fact, Kuljic's name is on that incorporation document for Maybach International Group, which I showed earlier back in 2016. He goes by the nickname, the moniker of George, and his email is literally george@maybachglobal.com, one of his many aliases. So this is Alina Holdings, in which they all also share ownership in as well. There was another entity affiliated with them called CKD, and I believe that was a reference to Kuljic, and Dalibasic Holdings, which was also registered out of Florida. That is an example of one of the shell companies they had initially, which became which effectively gave birth to Maybach Group. Maybach's first U.S. presence actually appeared as Maybach Capital. And again, all these guys are out of Novi Sad, Serbia. So, Mr. Producer, if we go down to Dorde Kuljic and click on his name, we'll be able to find out a little bit more about him as well. So he was the founder of the Maybach International Group. He's the son of a Serbian transportation oligarch. He attended primary school in Switzerland to the tune of about $60K a year for room and board before moving to NYC in the 2010s. He dated for 5 years a woman named Anastasia Raznatovic, who is a famous singer in Serbia. She's also the daughter of a famous singer. And we'll get to her father in just a second, and I will kind of round this out for today's presentation. We'll bring you back home to Singham afterwards, but want to include this in here as well because of if anyone had questions as to whether or not these guys were part of some organized crime or affiliated with organized crime in some way. Yes, they are. As a matter of fact, and Anastasia is really a key link to that. I should also note that he is no longer dating Anastasia, but they do share multiple residences still, even though he's married to a woman he met through Anastasia, and they now have 2 kids and live in New York City. So if we click on Anastasia's node, you'll see she's the singer of a very famous Serbian singer named Cheka. And she's also the daughter of a guy named Zeljo Arkan Raznatovic. Now, the reason I know that they were together, because if we click on the link, this will give you a whole episode, like a whole story about how they're all connected. If you go and you look at George's link as well, you'll see. Oh, it's not there anymore, but that's interesting. Anyways, you'll see up here in the picture, the image node picture, that's you have George here on the right. The middle is Anastasia, and on the left is Cheka. Mr. Producer, if you can pull that one up for Anastasia. Yes, so on the right you have George Kuljic, and there's not an actual photo of him which existed prior to 2016. And this is just an article from the Mirror discussing Anastasia and her family and who her father was, who we'll go with at the end here next.
This is the Archon.
Yeah, this is Archon's daughter, and they're discussing how she, still lives like the lavish lifestyle over in Belgrade, and she has. So George Kuljic, even though he's basically spent a lot of years in America, he still has a huge, famous kind of cultish following in Serbia. But there isn't a photo of him online basically prior to 2015, 2016. Part of that was probably because he was living mostly in the U.S., but also because of his father's connections. Novi Sad, Serbia is actually really the hub of organized crime in Serbia. And that brings us to Archon. And we'll end it there with him. But let's click on Archon. Again, you'll see the photo of her, but within the encyclopedia, within the link there, if we click that, it will just give you a bit of a background as to who he was. He was a Yugoslav warlord. He was accused of and actually convicted of ethnic cleansing, as well as gun running, extortion, organized crime. Um, One interesting characteristic of Serbian football is that almost all the teams are owned either directly or indirectly by organized crime. And Arkin was no exception, as he owned his own team as well. But he was considered a henchman for Slobodan Milosevic and was a keynote in all forms of corruption throughout Yugoslavia and afterwards, all the way up until when he was assassinated in 2000. So again, when we look at this from a 30,000-foot view, you have a Yugoslav warlord whose daughter was dating the business associate of the guy who's running Roaming Networks USA, which is connected to Dominion voting.
And Dominion voting being also connected to Huawei, connected to, and if you look back and you look at the way that they've done things, even dating back to Smartmatic days when they owned Sequoia voting systems, and you pull, and I know we're not going to get to it today in this, and as we start putting these different pieces together, I want you guys to know that they'll say, oh, that they're so what, they're connected. That doesn't mean they did anything wrong. Yeah, it does, actually. It does.
Yeah, and for all the naysayers who say that that connection is just circumstantial, no, it's not. Smartmatic and Dominion are both listed as creditors to Sequoia voting and Sequoia's bankruptcy proceedings.
And the Sequoia bankruptcy, the interesting part about the Sequoia bankruptcy specifically is that intellectual property was retained by Sequoia, and Smartmatic and Dominion both gained in the bankruptcy access and use of that proprietary information and IP.
Correct.
So you and then we're going to get in later to ES&S and its connection. So all of the system architecture in every system is based off the same fraudulent systems that allow for them to steal elections across the country.
Yeah, and we'll get into the British role later with Apex Partners, but it's also worth noting that NCC Group now holds in their portfolio as a third-party escrow agent, Dominion Voting and ES&S. So the source code for Dominion Voting and ES&S are controlled in escrow by a British defense firm called NCC Group. But anyways, just to kind of round this out and bring it back, next we're going to be pivoting to other connections, which when Neville Singham has. So on one side we have ThoughtWorks and the technological aspect of it, but on the other side we have the activist aspect of it, and he is the founder and the funder for the Party for Socialism and Liberation. He's also married to Alicia T. Singham Goodwin, who actually sits on the board of the DSA New York City Steering Committee along one Zoran Mamdani, who we will also discuss at length in future episodes. So
who's also connected to Antifa, who's also connected to, to the Muslim Brotherhood. And this is all documented. It is a sophisticated web of people. It's organized crime.
It is. And one thing to understand about organized crime is, the 90-10 rule, as I allude to, 90% good or legitimate, so they come under the 10% illegitimate. And these are no different. But yeah, he actually, while he was at Bowdoin University, he actually wrote an article effectively professing his love for the Muslim Brotherhood and how when Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood fell while he was in Egypt under the Muslim Brotherhood rule. He felt he had to leave the country because he couldn't wear his beard. He felt he had to shave his beard because he would be targeted for being a Muslim Brotherhood supporter, for being what we call Ikhwan. So, with that, I think we'll leave that all for future episodes. I think we're probably reaching the point of information saturation for the viewers out there. So, let's let them fester and kind of ponder some of the information presented in this episode before moving on.
Here's a question for you. Are we going to be able to put the documents, roaming network documents, and all the things we have, the mind map, is that accessible so people can get ahead of this if they want to?
Well, the mind map is publicly available. Now, not everyone has access to it. They can't edit it, obviously, but it is publicly accessible.
Do we want to tell
The
people that
roaming,
where they can find that, or should we hold off on that while we're talking right now?
um, I honestly, it could just be found on, it's a Graph Commons. It's, a publicly available tool. It's a great tool, especially if you're just looking for something quick and just lay everything out. The notes I have, the information contained in that mind map is incomplete. That mind map is going to get much bigger, much deeper, but I think it's good that we start on presenting this information publicly right now at this point, so that way we can kind of work people into who some of these actors are. You were going to hear a lot of the same names come up repeatedly. Again, like I said, Neville Singham. How is this guy who is implicated in interference in South Asian politics? How is he connected to Seth Rich and the DNC and Zoran Mamdani? He's a central node in all of these things. So I think when we look at things through a more transactional layer, and that it's all this occurs in a much more anarchic sense than what people say probably prejudiciously surmise, that's when you can begin to really connect a lot more dots and see a lot more behavior, which you would expect from criminals. So with that,
Yeah. So
I
let me
think
just ask you one more question before we wrap up. Okay. There's a central piece to this dating back to 2021. I interviewed a guy that was tied to Fox IT, which is a CIA front. None of this could exist without the CIA. None of this. There's absolutely no way possible that the CIA doesn't know, and by extension, in large part, the intelligence community of the United States would not know what you know about all of these people in this connection. How would it get past them if they weren't complicit in this?
so. It's interesting you mentioned that because I've spoken with people who have experience, let's just say connections to the IC community, and the general consensus is that they either turn a blind eye to something like roaming networks, or roaming networks is what they refer to as an OGA, which is other government activity.
Yeah.
An interesting point about Fox IT that you mentioned, because again, we have those payment receipts for Fox IT. Fox IT is owned by NCC Group, that escrow company I just recently mentioned, which holds the escrow accounts for Dominion Voting and ES&S. They too own Fox IT.
And that's a known.
Okay.
What's that?
As publicly available information. They actually just recently acquired Iron Mountain Eagle property, which held ES&S's source code. And the reason I know that is because it's listed inside of their Vancouver RFP. when they were bidding for the elections in Vancouver. So these are all publicly available documents. You just have to know where to find them, and that's where the open source angle comes into all this. But that's also why I wanted to include a lot of the links within the mind map itself, within the graph.
So you can do your own research, and it can take you down a rabbit hole pretty quick.
Well, yeah, I mean, the CIA is listed on the mind map. They have a very extensive involvement in some, just say, CD activity. But there's probably the biggest factor in all of this, which I found was the microfinance angle, and we'll be able to get into that in the future because that's basically how they launder everything now, is through microfinancing schemes.
Say it
And I will be able to. Oh, I mean, at the onset of the episode, I discussed a guy named Mohammed Yunus. He runs a microfinancing institute in Bangladesh and has a not-profit in the U.S. called Grameen America, which for a period of time was essentially run by Christine Maxwell's, by Ghislaine Maxwell's sister, Isabel Maxwell, who was a longtime advisor to Eunice, and talking about another corporate entity, which I mentioned at the onset of the broadcast, Apex Partners. She is actually a member of the business development committee for Apex Partners, which owns Singham Slot Works. They purchased it in 2017. So again, you kind of see how all this is related in a sense. And again, there will just be more connections made. I understand it's probably a lot right now for people to, go from one thing to another. How did we get from 9/11 to, Bangladesh to talking about organized crime in Serbia's connections to roaming networks? It's all related. It's all connected when you just look at the relationship science aspect of everything. And that's not to sound like a black pill.
Yeah, I mean, you have a guy that
'cause
runs a
that's-
trucking company that also runs. You look at the mechanisms that are necessary in order to steal elections and to influence operations related to elections, whether it's the minions of the world or, I mean, once you have access to all the information related to that, it becomes really easy to manipulate and to steal elections. Very, very easy.
Well, and that's also, going back to Marco Polo and Garrett's work product. That phone call from Hunter Biden with Greg Penner, who is basically CEO of Walmart, discussing how they can deliver ballots, is rather basically rig the election for Hunter's daddy. It's rather indicative of their behavior, and again, like you said, having a trucking company, from Canada to Illinois down to Florida, covering the whole eastern seaboard. That is a very valuable asset if you want to engage in illicit behavior. So,
All right.
again,
Well, we're gonna do more on this. We're gonna end it on here for this. We'll do the second episode this coming week, second iteration, second segment this coming week, and in that we'll tie back to the Clinton Foundation, politicians, and how does it all play a part in what's happening in New York, what's happened in New Jersey, and across the country, the things that we could see, even what's happening in California, which is even a bigger problem all by itself. B, thanks for joining us today, and I look forward to next week as well.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And to your audience, not used to doing stuff like this, so pardon the hiccups. This is just a new experience, and definitely something unique and never really done before. So bear with us as we iron everything out. I appreciate it.
It's a lot, though. And forensically, once you start putting it together, it becomes very, very clear what's happening next. All right,
Correct. I agree. All right.
God bless you. Thank you
you.
for doing the work that you do, and we'll see you again next week.
All right. God bless you guys, man.
All right. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about a lot of this stuff, and we have a list of all of these URLs, and that ties us back to some information related to elections, even stuff related to John Polis at Dominion Voting Systems, some of the private equity firms and the people that work within those private equity firms at Staple Street Capital, how that relates to the Carlyle Group related to some of the things we're talking about with Huawei, Hickey Vision, and roaming networks, and how those people then correlate and are connected to Nikola Petrovich and some of the other people like that are from Serbia. So you have the Serbia connection, you have an undeniable Ukrainian connection, you have the U.S. connection, and you have all these different things that are happening that surround our elections. And we haven't even started talking about the Clinton Foundation, the connection to Republican congressmen who, frankly, were behind the stealing of the election just as much as the Democrats over the last 25 years. So a lot of stuff to go over. I want you to pay attention to, we tried to stay away from certain aspects of people because it's going to make more sense when we start dragging in some of the other organizations that are out there tied to Antifa, tied to Mandami, tied to the Muslim Brotherhood, and even tied to Israel. So I hope you guys have a great Saturday. It's great to be with you. God bless you, and we'll see you on Monday.
If you would like to know more information about this presentation, please feel free to follow us on X at CounterDawa, as well as our website, counterdawa.com.